So hello, this is Kieron Self. I'm in conversation today with John Giwa-Amu, who for the Made in Wales project, which is part of Ffilm Hub Wales. So I just want to talk to you generally about your new film, The Man in My Basement, and how that came into being, really. So it's adapted from the 2004 novel by Walter Mosley, directed by debut director Nadia Latif, and it's really meaty, intelligent, I guess something to ponder on a lot after you've seen it. Thematically incredibly rich and exploring heritage and grief and guilt. So how did that project come your way, and what was the journey from you sort of condensing the novel, or how involved were you? And at what point did you get involved in the production process?
I was brought on by a friend who I met on a project, a course called Inside Pictures, which is like a global producers get assembled for a year, networked, put together, taken out to LA, London, introduced in the Dog and Pony Show to various financiers, distributors, other people. And one of the people I met on that, Luani, worked for a company called Protagonist, and they'd been on the project for quite a long time before I was on it, probably 4 years, 5 years. Which to any writer sounds horrific, but that's the reality of making movies. They weren't quite able to make the ends touch of the budget versus that was necessary versus what could actually be raised.
Yeah.
So I was looked towards of, can you get involved in making the script work within potentially shooting Sag Harbor, East Hamptons, New York, in the UK. And you know me, I like a challenge. So I said yes after consideration, because it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Making a commitment to do that honestly and with authenticity, and not make it look like something shot outside. So that was how I came on. I met Protagonist more broadly. We've subsequently done other things together, and then was introduced to Diane Houslin, who's the business partner of Walter Mosley. I got acquainted with the work, of course. I was acquainted already with Denzel in Devil in a Blue Dress, and Samuel L. Jackson in Last Days of Ptolemy Grey, and I'd seen that work. And Diane was the producer, for Last Days of Ptolemy Grey, and she's been working with Walter and his business partner over a long time. So I was greatly honoured to be trusted, to be honest, to take such a seminal book. And it's an incredible book, The Man in My Basement. It's, the book itself is brilliant, and it touches upon and distills a lot of what is core in Walter's work. So it's a black male protagonist out of the US. A lot of his characters deal with, I suppose, characters who've enjoyed the benefit of inheriting or owning property. And of course, this is like a crux stone, but it's actually a repetitive theme throughout his books, generational wealth and how that's handed down, and economics linked to politics, especially in America, and all that stuff is kind of all packaged up in his work. So I read that, loved the script, met Nadia, incredibly smart, erudite, theatre director with a great heritage and pedigree in theatre, assistant director of the Young Vic. And it was just a great package, and of course not least, Willem Dafoe was actually on board at that time as well. So how are you going to turn that down realistically? So that's how I came on board. But I had to know that I was adding value, and being able to map the project out here creatively and make that work, map it out financially and make the finances work. And then finally, Welsh Government and Ffilm Cymru helped with funding on the project. So that was my journey to coming on.
Yeah. And why could Wales step in for that landscape? Is it because of the diversity of landscape we've got in Wales? And is it to do as well with the readiness of the crews and the professional expertise in the area? How easy was it then to sort of shove everybody together and find the places that you needed?
Wales and that area of New York, the Hamptons, it is quite green and lush, and you know, it's there's a lot of similarities in the landscapes. Obviously, the architecture is completely different.
Yeah, yeah.
But we did manage to find a house which was built by one of two brothers who went to Pennsylvania in the early 1900s. One of the brothers came back to Wales.
No way.
And he built the same house that he had out there in this little village in Wales.
Fantastic.
Incredible.
What
So
a
you got
great
this
find.
wood clapboard house, and there's two next door to each other. So when you filmed them, you actually had an additional set behind to look like it was part of a street. And
because I thought they might be constructed for the film.
no, that was credit to my previous head of production, Sarah Barker, who just kind of started digging around and then showed me this article of these two houses that looked so incongruous that when we were like, okay, you know, that's the ace in our hand and we can build a hand around that. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant. And in terms of crews, do you work with the same crew, or is it just who's available, or are there core people you always go to in Wales with projects?
We tend to cast the net wide with heads of department, and we've always done that across our films of who is the right person for a given fit on a given project, and often that'll be, of course, down to the director and who they want to come on board. We, as with any project, you know, if you shot a project in Nigeria or Thailand, you'd probably want people from that area in the project, and our particular, you know, cultural onus was to have Americans contribute their culture, obviously, and to this, and that's pretty hard in Wales.
There's loads of them.
So, but we tried to honour that as much as possible. So, of course, Willem's from America, although he doesn't live there anymore. Corey's, you know, very much American. Anna Diop, you know, American. Diane, American. Walter, American. So we tried to kind of have that authenticity on set. So it would have really bugged me if the accents didn't work, for example. You know, or so to have those people around so they can go, hang on a minute, no, it's not like that. So there's little things like road markings, like, that looks a bit wrong to me. That doesn't feel like it'd be in America. And Diane's like, no, that's in America, that's fine. I was like, okay, I feel safe. I feel safe now.
So did you take Willem Dafoe out to Bridgend? Did he go to the retail park? Was it?
Willem was awesome. Like he came to he did his own business and kind of went out on his own in town, and which is kind of pretty well publicised. He liked his curries, but he was, you know, he's a real gentleman in the sense that he, you know, he's someone who's signed a lot of autographs in his life. He's had 4 Academy Award nominations. He's a famous person, you know, but his patience with the public and with people was really, you know, I don't mind saying sycophantic, but it was inspiring that someone can be so grounded and nice to the public. So we went in Geo's on match night, right? So I was like, I can take you somewhere fancy, or you can come and see Cardiff on rugby national night.
Fantastic.
In, you know, one of the heart restaurants of Cardiff, of a fixture, you know. Not necessarily super fancy, but you'll see what it's all about. Of course, they're singing Delilah in there. It's fucking crazy, you know. It's like going off in years. And then he has a queue of people waiting to get photographs with him, autographs, you know. But he just stayed like calm as a korma, you know, and just did all the autographs, all the, you know, photographs on the way out. And yeah, he was a gent. And then super, you know, aside from all of that, his professionalism on set and the type of project he wants to be aligned with, you know, he's at a stage in his career where obviously he gets to pick and choose. And so, you know, it was lovely being around someone that powerful who wears it so well.
Yeah. And also working with the debut feature director, Nadia. And that was all fun because she's got an extensive background with actors, which you can really tell in the scenes between Corey, Hawkins and Willem. There's a lot of positive dynamics there. Was that okay? I mean, in terms of, that's quite a big risk as a producer to have a debut director, or was it that she was attached before, or did
she was attached before? The project's been put together for over 10 years. You know, I was only on it for 3 or 4. You know, maybe coming up to 4 now, but 3 of them. You know, there was a fair amount of script development before I came on. You know, but Nadia was part of the project before I came on. She got selected by Walter and Diane and Protagonist, and the comfort with Nadia was that, of course, she's got this long lineage in theatre, so she really didn't feel like a first-timer.
Yeah, sure.
And, you know, we surrounded her with the best heads of department that we could, who were just fantastic. So Ula Pontikos, who, you know, did the Sundance Winner Weekend. She's just come off Blade Runner, the TV series, Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. You know, great cinematographer, whose work I've actually admired for longer than I've been on this project. And then same with, you know, our production designer, Catherine. So we were able to kind of flank her. Mark Towns, the editor, you know, who did Love Lies Bleeding, and Saint Maud, you know, really powerful, award-winning, you know, collaborators. So the blend of her theatre history with some seasoned and talented professionals was a great mix.
Yeah, great. And so that's where you are now, you know, and you've got H is for I'm never sure. H is for Hawkins coming out as well. You've got 2 festival showings in the next couple of weeks. But how did you get your start as a filmmaker? Because I know you started off as a director. You won the BBC Talent thing. You did a great film, Barry the Barber, with Brian Hibbard, who used to be my landlord.
Did he?
Yeah.
Right.
And why did you? Was there a shift? Did something inspire you as you were growing up to want to be involved in the industry? What was the sort of moment, or was there a moment?
I was just a very quick whistle stop tour. I was head boy in school. I was doing maths, pure maths, math statistics and economics.
Wow.
And I really didn't like pure maths. I really liked math statistics though, because I could see how it was adaptable. And to cut a long story short, I didn't get on with the whole course, ended up hanging around in arcades and spotted some kids who were in these arcades quite a lot. Ended up playing fruit machines professionally for about 2 years. Right, so we worked out the systems behind them and my math statistics got applied to that. Then I graduated into poker and became a sponsored poker player. So while all that was happening, I kind of felt like I wasn't going to push past a certain level in those specific disciplines, if you can call them that. They are disciplines. And, you know, through meeting someone and them introducing me to a film set, I as soon as I walked onto it, it was a Welsh language production. So I didn't even speak, you know, I didn't even tell what was going on. Yeah. But I knew when I walked onto it, I was like, I've never seen anything like this before. This is amazing. And that's what gave me the bug, was being on this Welsh language film set. And I loved the idea of the organisation of it. I loved the idea that it was a graveyard scene and people just moved into this graveyard and there's a whole film crew and you're just like, you know, you just take over. And, you know, somehow there's an order in that place and it wasn't inhabited by these people before, and they turned up, got what they want and kind of moved out, and it was so organised, you know, and then the magic was behind the lens, of course, but it got me, yeah. That was the first time I realised that I was looking at on TV screen was actually made somewhere.
And was a part of a bigger picture.
Yes.
And you did a few episodes of Doctors, is that right? And a few sort of short films. But why was there a conscious move away from wanting to direct to produce to wrangling everything, or to have more control, or was it?
It was necessity, if I'm honest. I won the BBC Talent Award as a director. I won a BAFTA Cymru as a director. I'd written a movie which we'd cast Idris Elba in, and I went out to Hollywood with that film and had some big meetings at studios and all that stuff, and long story short, nothing came of it. Right. And it was incredibly frustrating to kind of have those accolades behind you and to look like you're going somewhere and not go there, you know, and I felt like I was not in control of my career in you know, and I had produced my shorts previously. So I knew I could kind of do that. I hadn't formalised the organisational side of it, but I knew I could just do it. So when the opportunity came to me, you know, and I met Caradog, who became my business partner and close friend in Red and Black Films, we almost had like the, you know, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown deal. You know,
before it went sour.
Before it went sour, and without the Prime Minister bit. But you direct first. and I'll produce, and then I'll direct and you produce, and we'll bounce that back and forth. And and of course, life never works out that way. You know, so that was the first one. So I knew I could give a lot to Little White Lies, which was the first film.
Yes, based in Swansea by Helen Griffin.
Again, Brian Hibbard.
Yeah, Brian Hibbard, Sarah Lloyd Gregory, all like Welsh acting royalty, and dealing with subjects that are, you know, unfortunately still incredibly rife. It should be re-released, I think.
It's a lovely film, actually. I do still love that one. I know that sounds blow my own trumpet, but it wasn't me. It was Helen Griffin who wrote it and Craddock who directed it. And you know,
but you helped make it, Charles.
I raised the money and made it happen, but nevertheless, you know, the kind of, it was a stage play, and Brian was in the stage play, and you know, there was so much already there. It was, you know, it felt like it was kind of delivered, really. You know, it was like the hard work has been done with the stories there, and the actors are there.
Yeah. And it was a real Welsh story, I guess, as well. And then from then you've moved on to a far more global stage, but have still managed to keep the roots of everything you're doing in Wales, like with The Machine, which I read was the most pirated film of 2014 or something. Is that true?
It was. Yeah, when it came out, it was the most illegally torrented movie in the world for like 2 weeks.
Wow. Which
which obviously we saw no money from. But,
I know, it's terrible.
But what did happen, which was helpful, was that Universal found out that statistic, and they were like, well, if that's true, then there must be a value in this intellectual property, and that then is what gave us the $9 million to make the pilot of the TV series that we made out in Toronto.
Yeah, so The Machine was a sci-fi film that you and Craddock made together. Yeah. Was your second movie is Red and Black?
And we almost didn't make a second movie. That first one did really well. We got a British Independent Film Award nomination. We took 6 BAFTA Cymru nominations, 1, 2, which was half of ITV Wales' share of all the nominations that year. So we were flying, you know. We thought this is going to be all right.
Here we go.
I didn't make another film for 6 years. You know, so it was kind of, you know, you ask a lot of questions in that time, like I did with my directing career, of should I actually be doing this while all my friends are actually doing quite well and buying houses and all of the things that proper grown-ups do.
Was that due to development hell stuff, or was it just
there's just a lot to learn.
Yeah, sure.
There's just a lot to learn, and I think it's important. I don't know what I would have done different in truth now, but I think to make life easier, if I was to give advice to myself back then, it would be don't jump in budget too fast. So we tried to jump from 90,000 budget on Little White Lies to 2.5 million budget, with everyone telling me that's just what you need to make a movie and that's what you have to do, and me believing them because they knew what they were doing. And it turns out they didn't, and it's my career. And it's me who's going to be stuck not working for 6 years listening to that. So you know, finding your own path is important, I think, and you know, and having a gut feeling, because the reason the budget was 90 because that's what we could raise. You know, 2.5 million was pie in the sky to me at the time. I'd never seen £1 million. You know,
and the responsibility.
Never mind too.
But and you've also got a company now, Goodgate Media, that do interactive games. Has that, and it's all based in Cardiff. But how's that progressing now? It's a different form of storytelling as what you've done as a director and a producer beforehand informed that. So obviously I saw the call up recently, and that seems to be blending elements of what you're actually doing now, weirdly. So was that an inspiration for setting that sort of interactive video film sort of scenario?
The call up was an interesting one in that it was a Brit List winning script. And the reason, and this is the smart thing that I did on that in this film, that is worth learning from, is that I didn't follow the mess up I'd made before. So I'd made The Machine at that point, and I realised someone's going to trust me with $1.5 million budget this time, because I've just done $1 million. They're going to trust me with sci-fi, because I've just won awards for it, and they're going to trust me that I can shoot it within the period and do it well. And all of those things were true. So it was like a really natural transition into that film. That's not the best film I've ever made. You know, it's still got 4-star in total film, but it's not the best film I've ever made. But strategically, it was a smart move to make.
A solid job.
And then to answer your question, Goodgate founded in our first releases in 2020. and it was very much a business decision for me. We had made a game of Don't Knock Twice. Our sales agent had gone bankrupt, with all of them sucking loads of the money into their black hole with them, leaving the investors. And I have a lot of, I feel a great obligation to my investors. They're not holes in the wall which you pull money out of, they're people. And so I felt really not good about that at all. But the game, which we were able to get off the ground, off the same intellectual property, started to fill that black hole.
Right.
Which I did feel good about. And I always remembered that, of seeing, oh my God, something we've done actually is generating cash, not like the machine where, it's all illegally downloaded, we get nothing. We're actually, I'm seeing that this is doing something and helping.
Sure.
That was the first commercial, creative blend that had ever worked for me, that had balanced both, So I started to learn more about gaming. The partner that we had on it, called Wales Interactive, showed me another genre which, we could be quite good at, which was live action entertainment with branching narrative.
Yeah.
And then I saw, how the recoupment was working from them and how the money was coming in from them and what budgets they were being done for. And it just felt very much within my wheelhouse of what we could do quite well. So we made the first one, The Complex, and it became the most successful title that they'd ever done in week-to-week revenues.
And do you want to continue? Do you prefer one to the other, or with linear filmmaking and stories, or is it? Obviously it's great to be empire building, but do you prefer one form over the other? Is one easier to do, I guess?
With my creative head on, I will probably just about always prefer film, but it's close. There are some amazing story games out there now, and it's all merging. And there's a lot more respect for gaming than there's ever been. Yeah. Like back in the day, you make a Mario movie with Bob Hoskins, and there's no,
things have changed.
People are not honouring the lore of the thing, or and are just treating it like a cash machine.
Yeah.
And actually, the people who play those games love them, and you've got to honour what they love about them. And I think that with things like The Last of Us, or even the modern Mario movie, or Sonic, and many other things, Fallout, for example, are all. It just shows where that part of it can go. But that, to be honest, is really a small part of what my ambitions are within the sector. We would love to transition IP out. We're actually making a game based on an intellectual property, a viral story about a penguin that gets taken by a fisherman and rescued, and all the oil scrubbed off it, and he feeds it a load of fish, and the penguin gets well again over about 3 months. And the penguin goes off to mating in Argentina, and the next year he hears a little peck on the door, and this penguin's back, right? It's a true story. Yeah. The fisherman called Jow. And so we're making a game at the moment which we funded, and we're publishing ourselves, based on that story, with a great financer in Los Angeles who I was lucky enough to meet. So we're doing that transition, we're actively doing that, but I think that more broadly than that, there are really, when we are dead and gone, not to be too grim, but when that is the case, the convergence, I'm pretty sure, and before that, like in 10 years, in 15 years, in the convergence of those genres together, of those different art forms, gaming and film, are all collapsing on each other. And I think where the green space is, to get into, is emotionally driven arcs and storytelling within games. And The Last of Us does that really, really well. Yeah. And that's just one example on a journey that we are on of, what we call lean in and lean back entertainment. A movie's lean back, you don't have to participate. Playing Grand Theft Auto, you're leaning forward. You're engaged. So that bridge point between those two different things is what we're fascinated in, and I still don't think we've gone that far on that journey yet. So of kind of
the beginnings of all of that. So and do you see yourself, because everything, you're still rooted in Wales? Why is that? Why haven't you moved to LA or London, or where you think that that's the hub of all that?
I'm never been that interested in London. It is just my mum's words, a dirty city, as it used to be in the 40s, literally with smog. But I've always seen it as just somewhere I pop in and out of and do meetings.
Sure.
And, Wales is an amazing place by my perspective, comparatively, in that I get to see green. I get to walk into the woods whenever I want to. I get to be near a lake, I get to be by the seaside. I get to be not surrounded by people, and I love that. And because I'm a producer, I'm looking for good economics as well, which it also covers compared to what you get in London.
Yes, absolutely.
And then LA, we lived in for a little bit. When I had my daughter, we lived in LA for a few months, and all the shine got lost off it during that time, to be honest. I was like, okay, this is what it really is. And it's great to go in and out. It's an important business hub, and and there's lots of wonderful things about it. And I've got good friends there, but it's not for me.
Sure. And what advice would you give to the future generations of Welsh talent then, who want to stay here but are looking for a foot up into the industry? Is there any sort of, I know phones have kind of democratized you just being able to make stuff, but is there anything you would like to have been told as someone starting off in the business 25 years ago about what you should do, or what the next steps should be?
I can't remember the Stereophonics who said you've got to go there to come back. And I think that's really important, is you can't just stay here. I've lived in Bristol, I've lived in London, I've lived in Toronto a little bit, LA, so I've got a taste of, I've travelled a lot, so I've got a taste of all of that, and I think that's important because, again, at I suppose, just trying to be helpful level, I was ignored in Wales for a long time until I won the BBC Talent Award, and of course that was a national award that was outside of Wales. And then suddenly people were like, "Oh, you're interested." I was always the same. Same John. The only thing that's happened is this little thing here, and that's it. So I think it's always good to go out and compete more broadly with a wider population, and that's what we now do internationally. Yeah. But I've always it's not the reason I did it, it's just what happened,
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think they're this is an obvious Welsh question, but do you think with Little White Lies was obviously a very Welsh story, do you think there are enough Welsh stories being made in Wales, or is it the fact that you can just have Welsh people in stuff and it doesn't matter? Like Richard Harrington getting shot in Havoc and stuff like that. But is there a story that you would like to tell that has got a Welsh sort of setting, or that you would like to be more obviously based here?
It's funny you mention Richard. I know during our pilot for the machine, we actively try and transport that Welshness wherever we go.
Yeah.
And so we brought Michael Lewis-Jones into Toronto. Yeah. For example, and it was lovely because Mark, bless him, helped us out a lot on Little White Lies. We paid him next to nothing for it, and bless him, he helped us out, and to have an actor of that quality in a movie that small was a big deal. So then to be able to go, look, Universal can now talk to your agent about money, and that's a whole different thing, and you can get looked after properly. We loved that, and obviously having a Welsh accent in a fully international position. Yeah. So yeah, we try and do that. We look for stories, we've got a development slate of stories that some of them, my dad was Nigerian, my mum is from, Derry, which is near Bargoed. So that's, it's two very different places. And where I find myself right now is centering around either stories from Nigeria/Africa and wanting to break them out into the international world, or stories from Wales of characters that haven't been done yet, or or historical times or important times that haven't been seen on screen yet, that will crucially have international appeal. So that's what I'm looking for. And it's hard to find those stories because it is a mixture of different elements. You need to make a film happen at a certain budget level, and part of it's casting, of course.
Yeah.
So you need your Willem Dafoe, or you need your Claire Foy or Brendan Gleeson, that we've had in H's for Hawk, to make those finance plans happen. So you're looking for a story that can marry those commercial elements with the elements, the reasons that I'm doing it, which is the cultural elements and the emotional elements. But it's not as simple as,
It's weird, that sort of ties in with the theme of Man in My Basement about heritage and what you inherit and how you choose to interpret that. And do you think there's a danger now of things being a bit too algorithmic? I don't think, you can say that of the Man in My Basement because it takes you to places you don't expect to go at all. But that whole sort of formulaic way of making movies, I mean, with adaptations as well, I guess you've got a registered sort of IP. But whether you think you have to, is it harder to get an original idea made as a producer now rather than something that, all audiences like this for the first 20 minutes, or this was a book that was very popular 20 years ago?
H's for Hawk is a Times bestseller.
Yeah.
The Man in My Basement is one of Walter's most cherished books that he's kind of, he's written. One of the things that was wrong in that 6-year period that I talked about was the fact that we weren't anchoring around, like, from my gambling days, you learn that you bet on things where the odds are in your favour. That's how the casino wins.
Yeah.
So I apply that to my literary and, commercial, creative endeavours, in that I don't just want to hope for the best. I want to know that the odds are in my favour. And if you have a piece of intellectual property beneath your work, statistically the odds are more in your favour than without it. And that applies to gaming and film. So in the games world, you could be interpreting a game that is either a sequel, prequel, remake, and there's a lot of that going on in the same way that is in movies. And the odds are that if you've got something that has already got brand awareness, then so The Machine was an interesting one because we deliberately tried to kind of use that knowledge, and it was a movie about a robot, but the underlying message to the investors was we're remaking Frankenstein.
Yeah, sure.
So when we went out and pitched Frankenstein with a robot, people were like, oh, I get it, I get what you're doing. And funnily enough, we kind of ditched that messaging when we went to production because actually it turned into something completely different. Although there's some touch points in there, but it's like that's the reason. It's just trying to make it actually happen.
Yeah, sure. It's like necessity rather than.
It doesn't mean I would never look at an original story by any stretch, but there would have to be really good reasoning behind it. We have got an original story slate as well, and plenty of stuff. But there's always an anchor point, whether it's genre and going into genres that we know have got momentum behind them.
Yeah, obviously you've done horror, you've done sci-fi, you've done sort of period romance with Silent Storm.
Yeah,
yeah. And do you think that the mid-budget film, which I guess you're sort of working in, or low budget, do you think that's going to be even more challenging? Because it seems to be it's either blockbusters or hardly any money, or you have to do something for a streamer and it has to have like Ryan Reynolds in it or something. But are you thinking that's going to get easier or to fund things, or is it going to get much harder over the next?
Well, the good news is it has got easier over the last 18 months because the tax credit's gone up.
Right, sure.
And it's gone up from 20% to probably 32% net, what you actually get, or 18% actually net to about 32%, which, is 14% of your budget that suddenly you don't have to raise anymore. It doesn't sound like loads, but actually that 14% can be the bit that makes those points touch, so that's really good news. And, Ben Roberts and Mia at the BFI and, them sorting that out. And, there's been a lot of lobbying and petitioning from PACT and, all sorts of people to make that happen. And that definitely had a positive effect. and I'm, you know, and all producers should be incredibly grateful, all creators, to be honest, should be incredibly grateful for it, because it's, you know, it's making things happen.
Yeah.
We're, you know, we're at a funny time right now in movies, that independent film sector, you know, people want events. You know, I was reading about a K-pop movie that, you know, Netflix went on to release in the cinemas, you know, just yesterday, and there has to be a reason for people to go. So I think about that a lot when we're designing a theatrical film and putting that together. Then, yeah, why is someone going to get up and go? Well, one reason may be because they like the book. That could be a reason. Another reason could be that it's a cultural phenomenon, you know, or the piece of cast who they just have to see, you know, and I know A$AP Rocky's in it, you know, out of the US, and that's such an, you know, there has to be something. There has to be something that, you know, gets people to get up, myself included.
And is there any particular story that you would want to tell in terms of just any personal story? I mean, you talked about your heritage. Is that sort of what, that would be a dream sort of project, to sort of be behind something that dealt with all that? Or any other sort of subjects that you think just aren't very well served in the UK film industry or in Wales themselves?
When I was out in Los Angeles, working out of Universal, I had time to crunch a lot of numbers and data on what actually gets made, and to cut a very long story short, it's basically summarised already in the get some IP behind you. You know, 85% of the stuff that was on the network was based on IP that already existed. So I was like, okay, but I kind of want to do something. I want something to break out of Nigeria, you know, ideally. So what should I do? So I started thinking, well, what works as a genre? Because I'm not going to get IP necessarily that everyone knows. There's Ben Ockery and there's various writers who are unknown writers, but it wasn't an obvious slam dunk of commercially proven properties. So then I started looking at genre, and I was like, okay, what genres work? And of course, detective fiction, detective novels, detective shows, murder mysteries, that type of thing. You know, there's lowbrow, there's highbrow, and everything in between, you know, with that. And I think True Detective was out around that time, a similar time, and I was like, wouldn't that be amazing to do something, you know, like that, with that caliber of director and writer, but out of that territory. But then it isn't as simple as just hiring the writer of True Detective, because they're not Nigerian, they don't understand the culture. And so that was the start of a journey of assembling the right writer with a nucleus of a genre I knew would travel if handled in the right way. The personal journey for me is about a detective who comes into Nigeria to solve a crime, who's mixed race like me, and you're called, one of the things you're called is yellow. If you're, you could be yellow, I could be yellow, you're a foreigner, I'm a foreigner. Okay. It's, so the series is called Yellow, and it got picked up by Apple about 18 months ago, so we're quite far into that at the moment with them. Burna Boy is attached to it, who won a Grammy, David Oyelowo.
Oh, fantastic.
OT5 Bentley out of The Handmaid's Tale, Chukwueze, Guardians of the Galaxy, Lenny Henry. So we packaged the whole thing up, and that's now with Apple that we're in the writer's room on that at the moment. Okay,
busy then. So that's great that you're actually achieving something like that. And so in terms of Wales, there's nothing, I mean, because I know this is going back a long time. You did It's My Shout, which Owl Creek Bridge, which was great, and again an adaptation of a very old short story. Would you want to, is there any sort of way you think people who are trying to get into the industry in Wales could get any further ahead? Is it by doing schemes like that, or is it just by going out and making it, or apprenticeships? Just from a, you know, where do you start if you're just coming out of film school and you want to stay in Wales? Would you give, apart from go somewhere else and then come back to get more life experience, or just see how things work? But for you as because the landscape has changed so massively since you started, do you think there's anything a new filmmaker could do in Wales now that would be helpful? for their career.
I think the life experience thing, not to jump over that, I think is really important because otherwise you've got nothing to give.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't, you know, what I turned out I had to give was, I didn't realise it, but, you know, coming from a professional gambling background is quite an oddity. When you're in it, it doesn't feel that odd,
Yeah.
you know, but it is. And Corrado, who I was in business with, and me, both worked in call centres for sales companies as well, with very strange groups of people, you know, who are, you know, selling different things that, you know, of various characters doing so from various backgrounds, and be soaking that up, you know, as a short filmmaker is really important. You've got nothing to say. You've got nothing to, unless you just happen to be a genius who can live in a, you know, in a void. But I think it's all about soaking it up, and then you get to full, and then you can start spewing it out.
Yeah.
You know, and
Be a sponge.
Yeah. So I think that is really important. I think that, again, you know, we touched upon this already, but not allowing other people's perception of what the industry is to affect you. Easier said than done. So I had someone who came into me the other day and was like, I need X amount to make a short film. And I said, well, the one I won the Beauty Talent Award with was 8% of that budget, you know, and it was funded by me. The one I won the 48-hour film challenge with was with £30, 28 actually. So, you know, you never let those constraints, you know, the question is, how much have you got in your pocket and what can you do with it? And I think that psychology for me has got stuff done.
Yeah.
And I've got to where I've got to now, you know, managing 8-figure budgets, and, you know, but it all started with 28 quid, you know, and it wasn't straight from there to there. And I think you can beat yourself up a lot by going, well, why aren't I getting the deal for a £2 million film or a £1 million film? It's like, well, it'll come when it comes, you know, and you push your way through the barriers to get there. And I think that's, yeah, I would have been happier if I'd known that earlier.
Okay.
Because I felt I wasn't succeeding, you know.
Yeah.
And actually, that's just the way it goes. In most, the ones you read about are the 27-year-old kids who've got a massive deal.
Yeah, it's just about graft and doing stuff. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much. I really wish you all the best with the films, and they're great. Hopefully H is for Hawkins. H is for H. H is terrible. You know, it is H. You're not supposed to say H. Will be a triumph as well. And I know that Man in My Basement is streaming soon, but it's going to have a cinematic release from the September the 12th. Yeah. Showcasing Everyman Cinemas. Yeah. And then going on to Disney. Is that right?
And we've got a US release as well for it. So, yeah, so we fly out to the premiere on Thursday in Toronto, and then tomorrow, in Telluride over this weekend now, in the Hitches for Hawk is showing, and it's kind of quite hotly tipped actually. So we'll see what kind of happens with that. But they're both incredible festivals, and I'm really proud to be in. It's the first time in both of them.
Great.
So.
All right, I hope it goes brilliantly.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time, John. Really appreciate
it. Pleasure.
That's great. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.